Ever had one of those days where everything seems to go wrong? Your alarm doesn't go off, you spill coffee on your shirt, and then traffic turns your commute into a nightmare. By the time you finally sit down, you're already exhausted, and the real challenges haven't even begun. Life has a way of throwing turbulence at us when we least expect it, whether it's a sudden setback at work, a personal loss, or just the weight of everyday stress piling up. But what if I told you there's an ancient philosophy, tested by time, that can help you not just survive these moments but thrive in them? Stoicism, practiced by emperors, warriors, and thinkers for centuries, isn't about suppressing emotions or gritting your teeth through hardship. It's about mastering the art of resilience, turning obstacles into opportunities, and finding calm in the chaos. Marcus Aurelius, one of history's most famous Stoics, put it perfectly: the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. That's exactly what we're exploring today: 24 Stoic principles designed to help you navigate life's turbulence with clarity and strength. These aren't just abstract ideas, they're practical tools forged in the fires of real adversity. Imagine having a mental toolkit that lets you reframe setbacks as stepping stones, or a mindset that helps you stay grounded when everything around you feels unstable. Whether you're dealing with a crushing disappointment, a daily frustration, or the uncertainty of the future, Stoicism offers a roadmap. It's not about avoiding difficulty, but learning to move through it with purpose. And the best part, these principles aren't reserved for philosophers on mountaintops, they are for anyone willing to put them into practice. So why does this matter now more than ever? Because life doesn't come with a pause button. Challenges don't wait for us to be ready. But what if you could meet them with a sense of control, even when things feel out of control? Over the next while, we'll dive into these 24 principles, each one a piece of the puzzle for building unshakable resilience. You'll discover how to shift your perspective, harness your emotions, and turn adversity into fuel. This isn't about quick fixes or empty positivity, it's about lasting change. So if you're ready to transform the way you face life's storms, let's begin. The journey starts here. The first Stoic principle that can change how you handle life's turbulence is this: focus only on what you can control. This idea comes straight from Epictetus, one of Stoicism's greatest teachers, who said, "Some things are within our power while others are not." It sounds simple, but here's why it's revolutionary. Most of our stress comes from wasting energy on things we can't change. Think about a typical workday. Your boss makes a last-minute demand, a project gets delayed by factors outside your hands, or a coworker takes credit for your idea. Your immediate reaction might be frustration, anger, or anxiety. But Stoicism asks a different question: which part of this situation can you actually influence? You can't control your boss's demands, but you can control how you respond, whether you let it ruin your day or focus on solving the problem. You can't force a coworker to be fair, but you can choose to communicate clearly and document your contributions. The moment you separate what's in your power from what isn't, something shifts. The frustration doesn't disappear, but it loses its grip on you. Imagine holding a handful of sand. The tighter you squeeze, the more slips through your fingers. But when you open your palm, you can actually see what's there. That's what the dichotomy of control does. It helps you stop squeezing so tightly. Here's a challenge for you. Grab a piece of paper and draw 2 columns. In the first, list things you can control: your effort, your attitude, the way you speak to others. In the second, list what you can't: other people's opinions, traffic jams, the weather. Then make it a habit to check in with this list when life feels overwhelming. you'll start to notice how much time and emotion you've been pouring into that second column, and how much lighter you feel when you redirect that energy. This isn't about giving up, it's about focusing your power where it actually matters, because here's the truth: you'll always face turbulence, but when you know where to place your attention, you stop being at the mercy of the storm. You become the one who decides how it affects you. Now let's talk about the second principle, one that might seem counterintuitive at first, but has the power to transform how you face adversity: amor fati, or love your fate. This isn't about passive resignation, it's about active acceptance, even celebration of whatever life throws your way. Friedrich Nietzsche, who borrowed this idea from the Stoics, put it best: "My formula for greatness in a human being is amor fati, not merely to bear what is necessary, but to love it." Think about that for a moment. What if, instead of resisting setbacks, you could see them as essential threads in the fabric of your story? Take Seneca, the Stoic philosopher who was exiled to Corsica under Emperor Claudius. He could have spent years wallowing in bitterness, but instead he used that time to write some of his most profound works. In his letters he wrote, "A setback is often the setup for a greater opportunity." His exile wasn't the end of his influence, it became the foundation for it. That's the heart of amor fati, recognizing that obstacles aren't just roadblocks, they're redirections. Here's where this gets practical. Think of a recent disappointment, maybe a missed promotion, a failed project, or even a personal rejection. Now ask yourself, what if this happened for you, not to you? What if this failure is actually clearing space for something better, or teaching you a lesson you couldn't have learned any other way? The difference between resistance and acceptance isn't just philosophical, it's visceral. Resistance tightens your chest, drains your energy, and keeps you stuck. Acceptance, though, it opens doors. Try this exercise. The next time something goes wrong, pause and say, "This is exactly what I need right now." Say it out loud, even if it feels forced at first. You're not pretending the situation is perfect. You're training your mind to look for the hidden gift, because here's the secret. Life's turbulence doesn't disappear when you practice amor fati. It just loses its power to derail you. Instead of fighting the waves, you learn to ride them. And that's when you discover that the storm you feared might actually be carrying you somewhere new. The third Stoic principle flips struggle on its head. What if the very thing blocking your path is actually the path? Marcus Aurelius scribbled this truth in his personal journals nearly 2,000 years ago. The obstacle is the way. He wasn't just offering poetic comfort, he was revealing a strategy. Every barrier, every setback, every no you encounter isn't just something to endure, it's raw material for progress. Picture an athlete who tears a ligament mid-season. The injury could end their career, or it could become the reason they discover a smarter training method, a deeper mental discipline, or even a new passion. That pivot doesn't happen by accident. It happens when they stop seeing the obstacle as a stop sign and start treating it as a detour sign. Take the story of runner Wilma Rudolph, the first American woman to win 3 gold medals in a single Olympics. As a child, she survived polio and wore a leg brace for years. Doctors said she'd never walk normally, but when her siblings played basketball outside, she'd stubbornly remove her brace and try to join them, falling, getting back up, falling again. That obstacle didn't weaken her, it sharpened her determination. By reframing her limitation as a challenge to outwork, she didn't just walk, she sprinted into history. Now here's your turn. Grab a notebook and write down one obstacle you're facing right now. Maybe a skill gap at work, a strained relationship, or a financial hurdle. Then ask these 3 questions. First, how could this problem force me to grow in ways I wouldn't have otherwise? Second, What hidden advantage might be buried in this situation? And third, what's one small action I can take today to start leveraging this obstacle? Don't rush the answers, sit with them, because the moment you stop resisting the obstacle and start interrogating it, you'll notice something extraordinary. The barrier starts to look less like a wall and more like a doorway. This isn't about toxic positivity, it's about tactical reframing. Marcus Aurelius didn't journal about his struggles to vent, he did it to mine them for wisdom. The obstacle isn't just something you overcome, it's the teacher you didn't know you needed. So the next time life throws a boulder in your path, remember, you've got two choices. You can spend your energy complaining about its weight, or you can start chiseling it into a stepping stone. The obstacle isn't in your way, it is the way. Imagine waking up one morning to find your car won't start, a dead battery, no warning. Now, picture waking up that same morning, but this time, you already have jumper cables in your trunk because you'd considered this possibility weeks ago. That's the power of Principle 4, negative visualization, or what the Stoics called Premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. It's not about pessimism, it's about preparedness. Seneca, who practiced this daily, described it as rehearsing in your mind what fortune might inflict, so when it happens, it doesn't catch you off guard. Think of it like packing that umbrella even when the forecast says sunny. You're not willing it to rain, you're simply ready if it does. Here's why this works. Our brains are wired to fear the unknown, and that fear often blows problems out of proportion. But when you've already walked through a scenario mentally, say, imagining a job loss or a conflict with a friend, you strip away the shock factor. Suddenly, it's not a monster lurking in the dark, it's a challenge you've already strategized. Take Thomas Edison, whose lab burned down in 1914, destroying years of work. Reporters found him watching the flames, already planning rebuilds. There's value in disaster, he said. All our mistakes are burned up. Thank God we can start anew. That's negative visualization in action, not paralyzed by loss, but prepared to pivot. Try this tonight. Spend 5 minutes before bed running through what ifs. What if your flight gets cancelled? What if your project gets rejected? Then ask yourself, how would I respond? No doom scrolling, no catastrophizing, just cool, calm problem solving. You'll notice two things. First, most of these scenarios never happen, but if they do, you're not blindsided. Second, you start spotting opportunities in the chaos. Maybe that cancelled flight means extra time to finish a book. Maybe the rejected project leads to a better idea. The goal isn't to predict the future, it's to loosen fear's grip, because when you've already faced the worst in your mind, the real thing feels less like a crisis and more like a challenge you're equipped to handle. And here's the paradox: by regularly visiting these mental worst-case scenarios, you actually cultivate gratitude. Seneca wrote, "He who has anticipated the coming of troubles takes away their power when they arrive." Suddenly, that slow commute isn't infuriating, you're just glad your car started. That minor disagreement isn't crushing, you're grateful the relationship is strong enough to withstand it. Negative visualization isn't about expecting disaster, it's about appreciating what you have while quietly preparing for life's inevitable bumps. So tonight, when you turn out the light, don't just count sheep. Count the ways you're already resilient. There's a practice the Stoics use daily, one that might sound unsettling at first but holds the key to unlocking your most purposeful life. Memento Mori, remember you must die. This isn't about morbidity or fear, it's about clarity. The Stoics saw mortality not as a dark cloud but as a spotlight, cutting through life's noise to reveal what truly matters. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations, "You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do, say, and think." Imagine living with that awareness, not paralyzed by it, but sharpened by it. How differently would you spend your time if you knew today was your last chance to make it count? Modern life bombards us with distractions, endless scrolling, trivial worries, the rush to accumulate more. But death, as the Stoics understood, is the ultimate editor. It strips away the superfluous and forces us to confront the core question: what legacy will you leave? Steve Jobs captured this perfectly in his Stanford commencement speech. Remembering that you're going to die is the best way I know to avoid the trap of thinking you have something to lose. He credited that awareness for every bold decision he made, from dropping out of college to launching Apple. Mortality wasn't his enemy, it was his compass. Here's how to put this into practice. Grab a notebook and write your legacy intention, a single sentence describing the impact you want to have, the person you aim to become. Not a to-do list, but a beacon. Maybe it's, I want to be the kind of parent whose love gives my children courage, or I want to create work that solves real problems. Then place that sentence somewhere you'll see it daily. When trivial frustrations arise, a rude comment, a missed opportunity, ask yourself, does this matter in light of my legacy? You'll find petty grievances lose their grip while meaningful actions gain urgency. The irony of Memento Mori is this: by embracing life's finiteness, you expand its depth. The writer Annie Dillard put it this way: how we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. Every morning, the Stoics would remind themselves of their mortality, not to dwell on death, but to savor life. They'd ask, if today were my last, would I be proud of how I lived it? That question isn't meant to haunt you, it's meant to free you. Because when you remember your time is limited, you stop postponing what matters. You speak the words you've been holding back. You take the leap you've been overthinking. You live not as if life is short, but as if it's sacred, and that changes everything. Principle 6 might be the most transformative habit you can adopt: journaling for self-reflection. Think of Marcus Aurelius, the most powerful man in Rome, sitting by candlelight each night scribbling in his personal notebook. Those pages weren't meant for publication. They became meditations, one of history's greatest works of philosophy, precisely because they were raw, unfiltered conversations with himself. That's the magic of journaling through a Stoic lens. It's not just recording events, but excavating wisdom from your own experiences. Here's how it works. Imagine your mind is like a snow globe. Throughout the day, thoughts and emotions swirl, making it hard to see clearly. Journaling lets the flakes settle. You start spotting patterns. Maybe you overreact to criticism on Tuesdays after back-to-back meetings, or you feel most at peace after helping a colleague. Without this practice, those insights stay buried. The Stoics knew this. Seneca wrote letters to himself reviewing his day, asking, "Where did I stumble? Where did I grow?" That nightly audit wasn't about self-judgment, it was about self-mastery. Try this 3-question template tonight. First, what did I truly control today? This pulls you back to Epictetus' dichotomy. Maybe you couldn't change your flight delay, but you controlled whether you snapped at the gate agent or used the time to read. Second, where did my emotions override my reason? Stoicism isn't about suppressing feelings, it's about understanding their roots. Maybe frustration over a missed deadline traced back to pride, not the situation itself. Third, what's one small way I can improve tomorrow? Not a grand resolution, just a single actionable step, like pausing 10 seconds before responding to stressful emails. Now here's your challenge. Commit to 7 days of this practice. Keep it simple, 5 minutes before bed. No fancy notebooks required. By day 3, you'll notice something surprising. The mere act of writing shifts your behavior. You start catching yourself mid-reaction, thinking, This'll be in my journal tonight. Do I want to describe patience or regret? It's like having Marcus Aurelius whispering over your shoulder, not as a critic, but as a coach. The key is consistency, not perfection. Some entries might feel trivial, traffic was awful, but I listened to a podcast instead of raging. Others might crack you open. I avoided that hard conversation again. Both matter because journaling, at its core, is the practice of befriending your own mind. And when life's turbulence hits, that friendship becomes your anchor. You're no longer buffeted by unconscious habits. You're navigating with intention. So tonight, pick up the pen. The most profound teacher isn't in a book or a lecture. It's in the quiet dialogue between you and the page. Picture a fortress, thick stone walls, an iron gate, a quiet inner courtyard where no outside storm can reach. That's the Stoic concept of the inner citadel, a mental stronghold you carry within you, untouched by chaos. Marcus Aurelius described it as a place of retreat where you could withdraw at any moment to find clarity, no matter what turmoil surrounded you. But here's the twist: this isn't about hiding from reality. It's about creating a space where you can observe life's turbulence without being swept away by it. Think of it like the eye of a hurricane. Fierce winds may rage around you, but at the center, there's stillness. Modern neuroscience backs this ancient idea. Mindfulness practices, whether meditation, deep breathing, or even mindful walking, activate the prefrontal cortex, the brain's command center for rational decision-making. When stress triggers your amygdala's fight or flight response, these practices help you pause, step back into your inner citadel, and choose your next move instead of reacting on autopilot. It's why Navy SEAL train in tactical breathing under extreme stress, or why CEOs like Ray Dalio swear by daily meditation. The tool might look different, but the goal is the same: building an unshakable inner space where external noise can't dictate your actions. Here's how to start constructing your own citadel. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a physical place, a stone tower, a quiet forest glade, even a cozy room with a fireplace. This is your mental anchor. Now think of a recent stressful moment, a heated argument, a looming deadline. Replay it, but this time visualize yourself stepping into that citadel. From there, observe the situation like a detached advisor. What emotions are present? What's actually at stake? You'll notice something powerful. The moment you create that tiny gap between stimulus and response, you regain agency. Try this exercise the next time stress hits. Clench your fists tightly for 5 seconds, then release. That physical act mimics the mental shift: tension, then deliberate release. With practice, you won't need the clench, just the breath will become your gatekeeper. Because here's the truth the Stoics knew: no one can control what happens to you, but everyone can control where they stand to meet it. Your inner citadel isn't a retreat from life. It's the vantage point that lets you engage with life on your terms. And the stronger those walls become, the less any storm can shake you. Consider this: how often do you do something good just for the applause? Maybe you shared a post about charity work but skipped the actual volunteering, or you held the door open only when someone was watching. Society trains us to crave recognition, likes, praise, promotions, but Stoicism flips that script entirely. Principle 8 cuts to the heart of it: act with virtue, not for virtue's sake. The ancient Stoics, especially thinkers like Cato the Younger, measured actions by one standard. Was this done with integrity, regardless of who saw? Cato famously walked Rome's streets barefoot in winter, not as a performance, but because he believed luxury weakened character. When his political enemies mocked him, he didn't adjust his behavior, he doubled down. That's the difference between virtue and validation. Here's why this matters today. Social media has turned virtue into a spectator sport. We perform kindness for clout, trade honesty for convenience, and confuse reputation with character. But Stoicism draws a line in the sand. True courage, wisdom, and justice are internal compasses, not external trophies. Think of a nurse who comforts a dying patient when no family is present, or a colleague who anonymously fixes a junior team member's mistake without taking credit. These aren't just nice gestures, they're quiet rebellions against a world that rewards visibility over value. So how do you practice this? Start with what the Stoics called the discipline of assent, pausing before any action to ask, am I doing this because it's right or because it'll be seen? Then take on a daily challenge, one intentionally unseen act of integrity. Maybe it's paying for a stranger's coffee without announcing it, or admitting a mistake at work even when you could have hidden it. The key is secrecy, not as a test of willpower, but as a recalibration of your motives. Cotto's legacy wasn't built on statues or speeches. It was built on moments no one witnessed, like refusing bribes when the treasury was empty, or giving away his inheritance to honor a promise. Those choices didn't always win him friends, but they forged something unbreakable, a self-respect no opinion could shake. That's the gift of virtue without recognition. You stop needing the world to tell you you're good, you already know. There's a split second that changes everything, the moment between what happens to you and how you respond. Epictetus called this gap the space where choice lives, and mastering it is the essence of Principle 9. Respond, don't react. Picture this, you're driving home after a long day and someone cuts you off abruptly. Your pulse spikes, your hands grip the wheel, and before you know it, you're leaning on the horn or shouting words you'd never use in polite company. That's reaction, raw, unprocessed emotion taking the wheel. But what if, in that same scenario, you took one deep breath and asked yourself, will this matter in an hour? Or am I just tired and taking it personally? That's response, the conscious choice to act from wisdom rather than impulse. Road rage is the perfect case study because it reveals how quickly external events hijack our behavior. Studies show the average person makes 9 aggressive driving moves per trip: tailgating, honking, gesturing, almost always fueled by momentary frustration. But here's what neuroscience reveals. Emotions like anger peak within 6 seconds. If you can create even a tiny pause, counting to 3, feeling your feet on the floor, you regain control. The Stoics didn't just theorize about this, they trained it. Epictetus, born a slave, faced daily humiliations. His secret, he'd rehearse his triggers in advance. When someone insults you, he'd say, it's like handing you a gift, you don't have to accept it. Let's role play this. Imagine your coworker takes credit for your idea in a meeting. Your face flushes, your first instinct is to call them out publicly. Now pause. Step 1, notice the physical signs: tight chest, quickened breath. Step 2, label the emotion. This is embarrassment mixed with anger. Step 3, ask, what's the most constructive way forward? Maybe it's addressing them privately later, or using it as a lesson to document contributions. The situation hasn't changed, but your power within it has. Try this today. Pick one routine trigger, a slow-moving line, a critical email, and script your ideal response in advance. Write it down. When X happens, I will do Y. You're not suppressing emotion, you're redirecting it. Like a martial artist using an opponent's momentum, you're turning raw reaction into strategic action. Because here's the truth, no one can control what happens in that first split second, but everyone can choose what happens next, and that's where your real strength lies. Comfort is the silent saboteur of growth, and the Stoics knew this better than anyone. Principle 10 flips modern culture's obsession with ease on its head. Seek discomfort for growth. Musonius Rufus, the Stoic teacher who trained Epictetus, didn't just preach this idea, he lived it. He'd intentionally bathe in icy rivers, sleep on hard beds, and wear simple clothing in Rome's opulent society. Why? Because he understood that luxury isn't just distracting, it's debilitating. When you remove life's friction, you atrophy resilience. Think of it like a muscle. If you never lift more than you're used to, you'll never get stronger. This isn't about masochism, it's about inoculation. Modern psychology calls it stress inoculation training, small, deliberate doses of discomfort that prepare you for life's inevitable hardships. Navy SEAL don't wait for war to test their limits. They train in freezing water, sleep deprivation, and grueling marches. The goal isn't to suffer, it's to prove to yourself that you can handle more than you think. Tim Ferriss popularized fear setting, where you voluntarily face minor fears to shrink their power. The same logic applies here. Discomfort, when chosen, becomes a teacher. So where do you start? With micro discomforts, tiny challenges that rewire your relationship with unease. Try a cold shower tomorrow morning. Not an Arctic plunge, just turning the knob to cool for the final 30 seconds. Notice what happens. Your breath catches, your muscles tense, and then, crucially, you adapt. That moment of adaptation is where growth lives. It's the physical proof that discomfort isn't fatal, it's formative. Or take the digital equivalent. Leave your phone in another room during dinner. The itch to check it will feel unbearable until it doesn't. The beauty of this practice. It scales. Once you've mastered cold showers, you might volunteer for a project at work that stretches your skills. Eventually, you'll catch yourself welcoming setbacks because you've trained your mind to see them as gym equipment for your character. Musonius Rufus put it bluntly, how can someone become brave if they only seek comfort? Courage isn't the absence of fear, it's the willingness to face what you'd rather avoid. And every time you choose discomfort, you're depositing resilience into your psychological bank account. So tonight, skip the cozy chair and sit on the floor. Tomorrow, take the stairs instead of the elevator. These aren't sacrifices, they're secret handshakes with your future, stronger self. Because the comfort zone isn't where life happens, it's where dreams go to gather dust. Life doesn't just happen to you, it happens for you. That's the radical perspective shift behind Principle 11. View life as a test. Seneca, the Stoic philosopher who tutored Emperor Nero, described existence as a school of life where every hardship is a carefully designed lesson. Think about that for a moment. What if the frustrations, setbacks, and even heartbreaks you face aren't random punishments, but assignments tailored to strengthen specific muscles of your character? The missed promotion teaches patience. The friendship fallout reveals boundaries you need to set. The financial stumble forces creativity. Suddenly, adversity isn't something to resent, it's coursework in becoming who you're meant to be. Take my own story. Early in my career, I poured months into a project I believed would be my big break, only to have it rejected without explanation. For weeks, I wallowed in self-doubt, convinced the universe was against me. Then I stumbled on Seneca's letters where he wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." That reframe changed everything. Instead of asking, "Why did this happen to me?" I started asking, "What is this trying to teach me?" The rejection wasn't a verdict on my worth, it was a diagnostic. It showed me where my work lacked clarity, where I'd prioritized speed over depth. That failure became the foundation for every success that followed. Here's how to put this into practice today. Grab a sheet of paper and write down one current struggle, a conflict at home, a work challenge, even a personal habit you can't seem to break. Now imagine it's not a problem, but a pop quiz designed to assess a specific skill. If your patience is being tested, what's the passing grade? If it's resilience, how would an A+ response look? This tiny shift from victim to student unlocks hidden agency. You stop resisting the test and start engaging with it. History's most resilient figures understood this. Thomas Edison didn't see 10,000 failed light bulb attempts as disasters. He called them ways not to make a light bulb. J.K. Rowling framed her early rejections as proof she was writing something original enough to scare publishers. The common thread: they stopped personalizing adversity and started analyzing it. That's the Stoic secret. When you view life as a test, every wrong answer points you toward the right one. So the next time life hands you a challenge, don't just endure it, examine it. Ask what's being measured, what's being taught, because the toughest exams often prepare us for the most meaningful victories. Have you ever watched a spider weave its web? Each silk thread connects to others at precise points, forming a structure where tugging one strand sends vibrations through the entire network. That's the essence of Sympathy, the Stoic principle of interconnectedness that Marcus Aurelius meditated on daily. He wrote, "What brings no benefit to the hive brings none to the bee." To him, the universe wasn't a collection of isolated events, but a living, breathing organism where every action ripples outward. Picture dropping a pebble into a pond. The splash seems small, but the waves touch every shore. Modern science confirms this ancient wisdom. From the mycorrhizal networks linking forest trees underground to the way a single act of kindness can uplift an entire community, we're wired for connection. This principle cuts through two of today's greatest struggles: eco-anxiety and social fragmentation. When headlines scream about melting glaciers or political divides, it's easy to feel powerless. But Sympathy reframes that overwhelm. You're not a helpless bystander, you're a node in the web. Take the Japanese concept of mottainai, a term expressing regret over waste, rooted in Buddhist respect for interconnectedness. Families practice it by repairing broken dishes with gold lacquer, celebrating flaws rather than discarding them. That mindset shift from "I can't fix everything" to "my choices matter precisely because everything is linked" is Stoicism in action. Here's how to embody this today. First, try the thread exercise. When you feel disconnected, visualize an actual thread running from your heart to someone else's, a loved one, a stranger, even someone you disagree with. Notice how that visualization softens your posture, your tone. Then take it further. Perform one act of collective kindness this week. Maybe it's picking up litter not just in your yard but in a shared park. Or buying an extra coffee for the office pot instead of just your own cup. These aren't grand gestures, they're deliberate acknowledgements of your place in the web. Marcus Aurelius ruled an empire, yet he wrote reminders like, "We're made for cooperation, like feet, like hands." That's the paradox of Sympathy. The more you recognize your smallness in the vast web, the more your actions gain meaning. Because a spider doesn't question whether its single thread strengthens the web, it simply weaves, and somewhere another thread trembles in response. Ever notice how some people seem to carry around an invisible backpack full of complaints? The weather's too hot, the coffee's too cold, the line's too long. It's as if they've trained themselves to spot inconveniences like a radar. Principle 13 tackles this head-on. Limit complaints. Epictetus, the Stoic teacher who endured slavery and exile, put it bluntly: don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Grumbling, he argued, is like drinking poison and hoping the other person gets sick. It drains your energy while changing nothing. Modern research backs this up. Studies show habitual complainers experience higher stress levels, weaker immune function, and even reduced problem-solving ability. Their brains literally rewire to focus on problems rather than solutions. Here's a simple experiment to uncover your own complaint patterns: the rubber band method. Wear a rubber band around your wrist for a day. Every time you catch yourself voicing or even mentally rehearsing a complaint, whether about traffic, a colleague, or the Wi-Fi, snap the band. Not as punishment, but as a wake-up call. By day's end, you'll likely notice two things. First, how often minor irritations dominate your inner monologue. Second, how many snaps coincide with fatigue or distraction. Ancient Stoics didn't have rubber bands, but they practiced something similar. Marcus Aurelius would mentally mark down each complaint as a debt to his own peace of mind. Now the upgrade: for every grievance you notice, counter it with a gratitude statement. Stuck in traffic: I'm grateful for this podcast that's teaching me something new. Annoyed by a messy kitchen: I'm thankful to have food to eat and people to share it with. This isn't toxic positivity, it's cognitive jiu-jitsu. You're not denying life's frustrations, you're balancing the scales. A Harvard study found that participants who wrote down 3 daily gratitudes for just 3 weeks reported significantly higher happiness levels 6 months later. The mechanism's simple. Gratitude shifts your brain's default setting from scarcity to abundance. Take the case of James Stockdale, the Navy pilot imprisoned during the Vietnam War. In his 7 years as a POW, subjected to torture and solitary confinement, he banned complaints among his fellow prisoners, not because their suffering wasn't real, but because griping wasted precious mental reserves. Instead, they created a gratitude alphabet, naming one thing they appreciated for each letter. A, air in my lungs. B, birds I can hear through the bars. This practice didn't change their circumstances, but it changed their capacity to endure them. Your challenge this week: 2 phases. First, audit your complaints with the rubber band method. Just observe without judgment. Then phase 2, for every snap, pause and articulate one specific gratitude aloud. You'll discover something fascinating. Complaints thrive in silence, but spoken gratitude starves them. Epictetus was right: the energy you spend lamenting the rain could have been used to dance in it. And that shift from grumbling to gratitude doesn't just lighten your mental load. It transforms how you experience the world itself. Picture this: a man lives in a barrel, owns 1 cloak, and when he sees a child drinking water from cupped hands, he smashes his only wooden bowl, realizing even that was excess. Meet Diogenes, the ancient philosopher who took Stoic simplicity to its logical extreme. His famous barrel wasn't just a quirky lifestyle choice, it was a living protest against society's endless hunger for more. 2,000 years later, his message cuts deeper than ever. We live in a world where enough is treated as a dirty word, where ads whisper that happiness lives in the next purchase, the next upgrade, the next fix. But Principle 14 asks the radical question: what if you already have what you need? The Stoics called this concept autarkeia, as self-sufficiency. Not in the sense of living off-grid, but in defining your own metrics for fulfillment. Seneca, one of Rome's wealthiest men, practiced this by periodically wearing shabby clothes and eating peasant food. Why? To remind himself that true security doesn't come from external buffers, but from knowing your baseline. Modern research echoes this. A Yale study found that once basic needs are met, additional wealth contributes little to happiness unless it aligns with personal values. The problem isn't money or possessions, it's the unconscious belief that they're the scorecard for success. Here's how to break that cycle. Grab a notebook and draw 2 columns. In the first, list society's definitions of enough, the salary benchmarks, the square footage, the car models. Now, in the second, write your actual non-material enoughs. Maybe it's enough time to read bedtime stories to your kids, or enough quiet mornings to feel grounded before work. Diogenes' barrel wasn't about deprivation. It was about creating space for what mattered: philosophy, laughter, sunlight. Your version might include a comfortable bed or reliable Wi-Fi, but the exercise reveals where you've conflated wants with needs. Try this experiment for 1 week. For every purchase you consider, ask 2 Stoic questions. First, does this serve a purpose or just fill a void? Second, if I never owned this, would I still consider myself enough? You'll start spotting patterns. Maybe retail therapy spikes after stressful meetings, or you equate new gadgets with self-worth. The goal isn't to live like a monk, but to consume with intention. Because here's the paradox Diogenes knew. When you define your enough, you stop chasing shadows and start noticing the abundance already in your hands. The barrel was never the point, the freedom was, and that freedom has a ripple effect. Studies show that people who practice voluntary simplicity report higher life satisfaction, not because they own less, but because they're no longer owned by their possessions. They've done what Seneca advised: set a limit to your desires, and you've placed a fence around your peace of mind. So tonight, as you scroll past ads or wander store aisles, pause. Hear Diogenes laughing from his barrel, inviting you to a different kind of wealth, one where enough isn't the floor you stand on, but the sky you finally have room to see. In the middle of a violent storm, a lighthouse doesn't rage against the waves. It stands steady, casting light through the chaos. That's the power of Principle 15. Be a lighthouse, not a storm. The Stoic philosopher Zeno embodied this when he survived a shipwreck that destroyed his entire cargo, leaving him stranded in Athens with nothing. Instead of despairing, he wandered into a bookstore, discovered Socrates' teachings, and later founded Stoicism itself. His reaction to catastrophe wasn't just resilience, it was alchemy turning disaster into the birth of something enduring. That's the choice we all face when turbulence hits. Will we add to the chaos or become the calm others orient themselves by? Think about the last time you witnessed someone leading through crisis, a teacher keeping a classroom focused during a fire drill, a manager staying level-headed when a project implodes, or a parent soothing a child after a nightmare. Their composure didn't just help them, it became a lifeline for everyone around them. Neuroscience reveals why this works. Emotions are contagious. When one person's amygdala, the brain's panic button, fires wildly, it triggers others' stress responses. But the opposite is also true. A single calm voice in a tense meeting can lower collective heart rates, shifting the entire group from reaction to response. The Stoics knew this instinctively. Epictetus taught, it's not what happens to you, but how you react that matters, because your reaction sets the weather for those nearby. Here's how to put this into practice. First, identify your lighthouse moments, situations where others look to you for cues. Maybe it's your team when deadlines loom, your family during disagreements, or even strangers in a crowded airport during delays. Then borrow a technique from emergency responders, the tactical pause. Before speaking or acting, take one deep breath and ask, what would steady look like here? You're not suppressing emotions, you're channeling them into purpose. Like a lighthouse keeper polishing the lens, you're ensuring your clarity reaches those who need it most. History's greatest leaders mastered this. During the Cuban Missile Crisis, President Kennedy famously read Marcus Aurelius' Meditations to maintain composure while negotiating nuclear brinkmanship. His brother Robert later wrote that JFK's calm was the only reason we're alive today. On a smaller scale, this principle applies to daily life. That friend who listens without judgment when you're venting. The coworker who reframes panic into solutions. They're not just offering support, they're modeling how to navigate storms. Your challenge this week: pick one high-stakes moment to practice lighthouse behavior. When tension spikes, notice your instinctive reaction, then consciously dial it back 10%. Speak slightly slower, unclench your jaw, listen more than you lecture. The goal isn't perfection, it's presence, because the world has enough storms. What it needs are more steady lights reminding us all, this too shall pass, and until it does, here's the way forward. Your attention is the most valuable currency you own, yet you likely give it away for free dozens of times a day. Seneca saw this 2,000 years ago when he warned about attention thieves, the people and distractions that fragment your focus without offering anything in return. In one letter, he described how the average Roman wasted hours gossiping in public baths or chasing trivial news. They live as if they'll never die, and die having never truly lived. Swap the baths for social media feeds, and his words feel shockingly modern. The average person now checks their phone 58 times daily, with mindless scrolling consuming over 3 hours. That's not just lost time, it's stolen presence. Here's what the Stoics understood that science now confirms. Attention isn't just about productivity, it's the foundation of your reality. Your brain physically rewires itself based on what you focus on, a process called neuroplasticity. Spend hours absorbing outrage-fueled headlines, and your neural pathways prime for anxiety. Fixate on gossip, and your mind starts scanning for drama like a metal detector. But direct your attention toward growth, and something remarkable happens. Marcus Aurelius' morning ritual included asking, "What quality shall I cultivate today?" That simple question set his attentional compass before outside influences could hijack it. Let's put this into action with a 3-step audit. First, track your attention leaks for 24 hours. Carry a small notebook and jot down every time you switch tasks, checking notifications, clicking clickbait, engaging in petty complaints. You'll likely find patterns. Maybe mid-afternoon fatigue triggers Instagram binges, or work stress sends you down news rabbit holes. Next, implement Seneca's digital sunset, 1 hour before bed where screens are banned. Use that time for journaling, reading philosophy, or simply sitting quietly. The final step is the most powerful. Ask of every potential distraction, does this deserve a piece of my life? If it doesn't serve your growth or joy, it doesn't get your eyes. History offers a striking example in Teddy Roosevelt. Despite his frenetic presidency, he maintained an almost stoic focus by scheduling thinking time blocks where he'd sit with just a book and notepad, no interruptions allowed. In those spaces, he authored 38 books and navigated national crises with rare clarity. You don't need presidential responsibilities to benefit from guarded attention. Start small. Tomorrow, silence non-essential notifications and observe how your mind starts reclaiming territory. Because here's the truth no algorithm will tell you. What you pay attention to shapes who you become. And that's too precious to leave to chance. Words are like arrows once loosed, they cannot be called back. That's why Principle 17 cuts to the heart of communication. Speak with purpose. The Stoic senator Thracia practiced what he called the triple filter. Before speaking, he'd ask 3 questions. Is it true? Is it kind? Is it necessary? Imagine applying that standard to every text you send, every meeting comment, even casual chats. Most of us would find our word count cut in half, but our impact doubled. The ancient Greeks had a term for careless speech, lalia, meaning empty chatter that drains energy without adding value. Today, we're drowning in lalia, meetings that could have been emails, comment threads fueled by ego, conversations where everyone talks but no one listens. Here's a modern twist on Thracia's filter. Grab your phone and record a casual conversation, maybe during lunch with a friend or a work brainstorming session. Later, play it back and analyze how many sentences served no real purpose. How often did you interrupt or steer the topic back to yourself? You'll likely notice 2 patterns: redundant phrases that pad speech, to be honest, like I said, and reflexive reactions that add little wow, no way. These verbal tics aren't flaws, they're habits formed in a culture that confuses quantity with connection. The Stoics proposed an alternative, measured speech, where silence isn't awkward but intentional. Consider Socrates, who famously said, "Speak that I may see you." He wasn't inviting monologues, he was testing whether words revealed character or concealed it. When a boastful young man once approached him talking endlessly about his accomplishments, Socrates listened patiently, then asked, "How much of that speech would you pay to have erased?" The room fell silent. That's the power of the triple filter. It's not about censoring yourself, it's about aligning your speech with your values. Try this exercise today. For 1 hour, impose a 3-second rule before speaking. Pause, mentally run your words through Thracia's filter, then proceed. You'll notice immediate changes, fewer off-hand criticisms that linger as regret, less time wasted on gossip that leaves you drained, more space for questions that draw out others' wisdom. The Roman playwright Publilius Syrus put it perfectly, "I often regret my speech, never my silence." In a world that rewards volume over substance, purposeful speech becomes an act of rebellion, a refusal to let your words be cheapened by haste or habit. Because when you speak less but mean more, people start listening differently, and that's when real communication begins. Holding a grudge is like drinking poison and waiting for the other person to get sick. It's a self-inflicted wound that changes nothing but your own peace. Marcus Aurelius wrestled with this truth in his Meditations, writing, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." Think about that for a moment. When someone wrongs you, the Stoic response isn't to cling to bitterness or plot payback. It's to refuse to let their actions dictate your character. Ancient Rome's history offers a striking example. After Julius Caesar's assassination, his heir Octavian, later Augustus, faced a senate full of conspirators. Instead of executing them all, he pardoned many, even appointing some to high offices. That decision didn't erase the betrayal, but it transformed Rome's civil wars into an era of unprecedented peace, the Pax Romana. Forgiveness isn't about excusing harm or pretending pain doesn't exist. It's about reclaiming your freedom from the past. Neuroscience reveals why this works. When you ruminate on resentment, your brain activates the same stress pathways as during the original injury. You're essentially reliving the pain while the other person moves on. The Stoics proposed a radical alternative: write a forgiveness letter you never send. Here's how it works. First, detail the hurt exactly as you experienced it, no softening. Then, shift perspective. Ask yourself, did this person act from malice or ignorance? Could their actions have stemmed from their own unhealed wounds? Finally, write a release not for their sake but yours. I choose to let this go because my peace is worth more than this weight. History's greatest healers understood this. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison, yet emerged insisting, "Resentment is like drinking poison and hoping it will kill your enemies." His ability to forgive his jailers didn't just free him, it freed South Africa from cycles of vengeance. On a personal scale, this principle applies to daily slights: the friend who forgot your birthday, the co-worker who undermined you. Try this tonight. Light a candle and name one grudge you've carried. Watch how the flame flickers but doesn't cling to the smoke. That's the choice forgiveness offers, to burn clean rather than choke on old embers. Because the tighter you grip a hurt, the deeper it cuts. But when you open your hand, you might finally feel the lightness you've been missing. Standing knee-deep in a rushing river, you'll never touch the same water twice. That's the essence of Heraclitus' famous observation: no man ever steps in the same river twice. The water keeps flowing, the banks keep shifting, and the only constant is change itself. Yet how often do we act as if life were a frozen pond, trying to preserve relationships, circumstances, even versions of ourselves that were never meant to stay static. Principle 19 invites us to stop resisting this truth and start embracing it. Impermanence isn't just inevitable, it's what makes existence beautiful. Consider two reactions to autumn leaves. One person laments their fading colors, clinging to branches as if they could stop winter. Another collects a few crimson leaves, presses them in a book, and marvels at their fleeting brilliance. Both witness the same change, but only one finds joy in it. The Stoics took this further. They didn't just accept impermanence, they used it as a lens to clarify priorities. Marcus Aurelius would meditate on the vastness of time, reminding himself that even the grandest empires would someday crumble to dust. Far from depressing him, this realization sharpened his focus. You could leave life right now. Let that determine what you do and say and think. Here's a practical way to internalize this. Grab your phone and photograph something transient today, steam rising from your coffee, shadows stretching at sunset, or even your unmade bed before it's tidied. Don't just snap the picture, study it. Notice how the steam's swirls will never repeat exactly, how the light will never hit that same angle again. This exercise isn't about capturing permanence, it's about training your eye to spot the poetry in passing moments. Japanese artists have practiced this for centuries through wabi-sabi, finding beauty in imperfection and transience. A cracked teacup repaired with gold isn't just fixed, it's honored for its history. The irony, the more we make peace with impermanence, the more present we become. Think of a child building sandcastles. They know the tide will come, so they pour their creativity into each tower without demanding it last forever. That's the Stoic secret. When you stop wasting energy fighting change, you free up reserves to engage deeply with what's here now. Your aging parents' laughter lines aren't just signs of time passing, they're evidence of joy accumulated. That project you poured your heart into, even if it eventually ends, wasn't diminished by its finiteness, it was intensified by it. Tonight, try this meditation. List 3 things that felt permanent 5 years ago but have since transformed. A job you thought you'd keep forever, a friendship that evolved, even your old hairstyle. Then ask what current certainties might future you look back on as equally fluid, not to provoke anxiety, but to ignite appreciation, because the river keeps flowing whether we protest or not. The choice isn't between holding on and letting go. It's between white-knuckling the shore or learning to swim with the current, and those who choose the latter discover something extraordinary. The water that seems to erase everything also carries the seeds of what's next. Actions speak so loudly that people can barely hear what you say over them. That's the core of Principle 20, lead by example. Epictetus, the former slave turned philosopher, had zero patience for hypocrites who preached virtue but lived differently. He warned his students, don't explain your philosophy, embody it. Picture a fitness coach who smokes during breaks, or a CEO lecturing on work-life balance while sending midnight emails. Their words might be polished, but their example erodes trust far faster than any speech can rebuild it. History's most influential leaders understood this instinctively. Take George Washington during the American Revolution. While his troops suffered through the brutal winter at Valley Forge, he didn't retreat to a warm mansion. He slept in the same drafty huts, ate the same meager rations, and endured the same frostbite. His presence in the trenches did more for morale than 100 fiery speeches. Similarly, when Mahatma Gandhi advocated for simplicity, he didn't just talk about spinning cloth. He sat at his charcoal wheel daily, callousing his hands alongside the poorest laborers. These weren't publicity stunts, they were proof that values mean nothing until muscles and blisters back them up. Here's where it gets personal. Grab a notebook and draw a line down the center. On the left, list 3 values you claim to prioritize, maybe integrity, health, or lifelong learning. On the right, note the last week's actions that reflected each. Did health mean hitting the gym or scrolling snacks on your phone? Did integrity include that white lie to avoid discomfort? This audit isn't about guilt, it's about honesty. Like a sculptor comparing their vision to the actual stone, you're assessing where your chisel matches your blueprint. The magic happens in the gaps. Maybe you advocate for kindness but snapped at a server when stressed. That disconnect isn't failure, it's data. Epictetus would say those moments are gold, revealing where your philosophy hasn't yet become reflex. The Stoic solution, micro-alignments. If you value patience, practice it first in low-stakes scenarios, letting someone merge in traffic or listening fully before replying to texts. Each small match between word and deed forges neural pathways, making virtue less a performance and more a default. Consider the ripple effect. Children don't absorb lectures about honesty. They internalize what they see when you find a lost wallet. Employees ignore mission statements but watch how managers treat janitors. Your life isn't just your own. It's a live demonstration others reference unconsciously. That's why Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one, not perfect, not performative, just persistently, quietly congruent. Because when your footsteps align with your fingerprints, people stop needing your map. They just follow the trail. You're stuck in traffic again, engine idling, minutes ticking away, that familiar frustration bubbling up. But what if those very moments you resent could become hidden pockets of unexpected value? Principle 21 flips the script on waiting. Find opportunity in delay. Seneca, who spent years in exile turning setbacks into literature, wrote, "Time is our most precious asset, yet we allow it to slip through our fingers like sand." His insight wasn't just poetic, it was tactical. He saw what most of us miss. Delay isn't stolen time, it's found time. The difference lies in what you build with it. Consider 2 commuters stuck in the same gridlock. One white knuckles the wheel, muttering about wasted minutes. The other keeps a book of philosophy in the glove box, using red lights to digest a paragraph. Both arrive at their destinations at the same moment, but one has traded irritation for insight. This isn't about productivity hacks, it's about reclaiming agency. Ancient Stoics practiced the art of turning obstacles upside down, not by denying discomfort, but by asking, what can this make space for? A delayed flight becomes solitude to journal. A long queue morphs into a chance to observe human nature. Even illness, as Seneca discovered, can be a forced pause to reassess priorities. Modern psychology confirms this approach. Researchers at the University of California found that people who reframed waiting periods as bonus time reported significantly lower stress levels. One group trapped in an airport during a storm complained endlessly. Another used the hours to plan vacations, learn language apps, or strike up conversations with strangers. The delay was identical, the experience was worlds apart. The Stoics would nod knowingly. They'd long understood that suffering stems not from events themselves, but from our judgments about them. Here's how to put this into practice today. First, identify your recurring delays. Maybe it's the school pickup line, the weekly staff meeting that always starts late, or the lag while your computer updates. Then preload these moments with intention. Keep a pocket notebook for brainstorming. Download thought-provoking podcasts for transit. Use elevator waits to practice mindful breathing. The key isn't filling every second, but choosing engagement over exasperation. Like a sculptor seeing raw material in a block of marble, you're training yourself to spot potential in pauses. History's great makers mastered this. Beethoven composed melodies in his head during long walks, later scribbling them feverishly at home. Maya Angelou rented sparse hotel rooms to write, turning isolation into creative fuel. Even the humble crockpot was invented by a man frustrated with slow-cooked meals. He saw the delay as a design challenge. Your delays won't always yield masterpieces, but they can accumulate into something profound, a life where time feels expansive rather than scarce. So the next time you're drumming your fingers at a doctor's office or watching a loading bar crawl, pause. Whisper Seneca's reminder, life is long if you know how to use it. Then decide, will this be a moment lost to irritation or claimed for something richer? The clock ticks either way. The power lies in how you answer. Marcus Aurelius kept a private journal filled with notes to himself, not grand declarations but quiet reminders to dig deeper. One line appears repeatedly, seek the why behind actions. It was his antidote to snap judgments, a practice we now call assumption inversion, deliberately flipping your initial reaction to uncover hidden context. Picture this: a coworker misses a deadline and your first thought is, they're lazy. Assumption inversion asks you to pause and consider, what if the opposite is true? What if they were overwhelmed caring for a sick parent or battling an invisible health crisis? This isn't about excusing poor performance. It's about recognizing that every action has roots you can't yet see. History offers a striking example in Abraham Lincoln's leadership during the Civil War, when his Secretary of War, Edwin Stanton, publicly insulted him as a low-born clown. Lincoln didn't fire or retaliate. He probed deeper, discovering Stanton's outburst stemmed from grief over his son's death. Lincoln later appointed him to his cabinet, where Stanton became one of his most loyal advisors. That pivot from judgment to understanding didn't just resolve a conflict, it strengthened a nation. Modern psychology confirms this approach. Studies show that when people explain someone's behavior using situational factors, they're stressed. Rather than personality flaws, they're rude. Their anger drops by nearly 40%. Here's how to practice this today. Recall a recent frustration, maybe a friend canceled plans last minute, or a driver cut you off in traffic. Write down your initial judgment, then physically flip the paper over and brainstorm 3 alternative explanations unrelated to character. Perhaps your friend got a panic attack they're too embarrassed to share. Maybe that driver was rushing to the hospital. The goal isn't to prove which scenario is true, but to loosen the grip of certainty. Epictetus taught that our suffering comes not from events, but from the stories we layer onto them. When you swap "they're wrong" with "I might not have the full picture," something shifts. The tension in your chest eases, your response softens. Try this experiment for 1 week. Each time you feel judgment rising, whisper Marcus' phrase, "Seek the why," like a mantra. You'll start noticing how often your first interpretation is the least generous one, and how much energy you've wasted on mental courtroom dramas where you served as both judge and jury. The cashier who seemed dismissive might be grieving. The snippy email from a colleague could mask their fear of failing. This practice doesn't demand you tolerate mistreatment. It simply creates space for more nuanced choices. Because understanding isn't the opposite of accountability, it's the foundation of it. When you approach others with curiosity rather than condemnation, you don't just reduce conflicts, you uncover opportunities for connection that rigid judgments would have missed. And those moments, more than any snap verdict, are where real wisdom begins. Success can be more dangerous than failure, not because it harms us directly, but because it lulls us into dropping our guard. Seneca saw this paradox clearly when he wrote, "Prosperity tries the souls of even the wise. Imagine climbing a mountain after months of grueling effort." The hardest part isn't the ascent. It's the moment you reach the summit and let your focus waver, forgetting that one misstep on loose rocks can undo all your progress. That's the hidden trap of achievement. It convinces us we've arrived when in reality, every peak is just another vantage point to spot new challenges. The Stoics drew a crucial distinction between joy, a deep, lasting contentment rooted in virtue, and fleeting pleasure that evaporates the moment circumstances shift. Consider two lottery winners. One splurges on mansions and luxury cars, convinced happiness lives in the next purchase. The other quietly invests, maintains old routines, and volunteers at the same soup kitchen. The first often ends up bankrupt and miserable within years. The second finds their windfall amplifies who they already were. This isn't about money, it's about the stories we attach to success. The Stoics warned that when we mistake external rewards for internal worth, we build our identity on sand. Seneca put it bluntly, "What fortune has made yours is not really yours." Here's how to stress test your own success before it tests you. First, define what prosperity means beyond metrics, not just salary figures or social media followers, but qualities like integrity, relationships, and growth. Then borrow a technique from engineers, pre-mortem planning. Imagine your greatest dream coming true: promotion, fame, wealth, and ask, how might this corrupt me? What old disciplines might I abandon? Who could I alienate? Write down the answers. This isn't pessimism, it's psychological inoculation. History's most enduring achievers practiced this. When George Washington became America's first president, he rejected royal titles, insisting on Mr. President to avoid the trappings of monarchy. After his presidency, he returned to farming, not because he had to, but to remind himself that power was a role, not his core. Similarly, Warren Buffett still lives in the same Omaha house he bought in 1958 despite his billions, not out of frugality alone, but to stay grounded in what matters. Try this exercise today. List 3 recent wins, personal or professional. For each, note one potential pitfall it could disguise. Maybe praise is making you complacent about skills that need sharpening, or financial security is eroding your hunger to learn. The goal isn't to dim your achievements, but to shine a light on their shadows. Because the Stoic secret isn't fearing success, it's preparing for its side effects with the same rigor you'd prepare for a storm. When you celebrate victories without depending on them, you build a joy that no market crash or missed opportunity can shake. And that's the kind of prosperity worth having. Every sunset offers the same quiet invitation, to let the day die so the next one can begin. This cyclical surrender is at the heart of Principle 24, die daily to live fully. It's not about literal death, but about the Stoic practice of releasing each day with the same intentionality as a life well lived. Marcus Aurelius would end his evenings by asking, "Have I done something for the common good? Have I grown in wisdom?" Then, regardless of the answers, he'd mentally lay the day to rest, not with regret, but with the clarity that tomorrow was a blank slate. The ancient Egyptians had a similar ritual. They'd place a miniature coffin in their bedrooms, not as a morbid obsession, but as a daily reminder that each nightfall was a rehearsal for the final letting go. Here's how to make this tangible. Find a window where you can watch the sunset, or even just face westward indoors. As the light fades, take 3 breaths and name 3 things you're releasing from the day. A resentment you've carried, a task left unfinished, or an expectation that no longer serves you. Then whisper Seneca's evening reflection. Today is gone. What remains is what I've made of it. This isn't self-judgment. It's an act of mental house cleaning. Like shaking sand from your shoes before stepping inside, you're creating space for what comes next. Modern psychology validates this ancient wisdom. Studies on sleep onset reflection show that people who briefly review their day with neutral observation rather than rumination experience deeper rest and heightened morning focus. It's as if the brain uses these moments to file away experiences, making room for new learning. Think of it like closing apps on your phone before charging it. The device works better when it's not cluttered with background processes. Your mind operates the same way. Now amplify the practice with a monthly reckoning. On the first of each month, pretend it's your last. Write a letter as if you had 30 days left, not with bucket list frenzy, but with distilled intention. Who would you spend silent mornings with? Which grudges would you finally drop? What ordinary moments would suddenly shimmer? This, as if, lens sharpens priorities faster than any productivity hack. When the writer Annie Dillard was asked how she stayed so prolific, she replied, "I write as if I'm dying. The urgency wasn't fearful, it was clarifying." The paradox of Memento Mori is this: by rehearsing the end, you stretch the middle. Days stop blurring into sameness when you treat each as a finite gift. That argument with your partner, less significant when viewed from the hypothetical deathbed. The project you've been delaying, more pressing when you tally remaining sunsets. The Stoics weren't fixated on death to depress you. They used it to electrify you. As the light fades to night, try their ritual. Release what's done. Then wake tomorrow as if it's both your first and last chance to live this particular day. Because in the grand scheme, it is. These 24 Stoic principles are more than ancient wisdom. They're a survival kit for modern turbulence, forged in the fires of real human struggle. Think of them as mental tools, each one designed for a different kind of storm. Some, like focusing on what you control or limiting complaints, are your daily wrenches and hammers, practical fixes for life's constant rattles. Others, like Memento Mori or amor fati, are your emergency gear, powerful enough to steady you when the ground shakes beneath your feet. But here's the crucial reminder: mastery isn't about flawlessly applying all 24 at once. It's about progress, not perfection. Even Marcus Aurelius, the philosopher king, wrote reminders to himself like a student, not a sage. Consider how a carpenter learns their craft. They don't start by building a cathedral. They practice joints, measure angles, and gradually assemble smaller projects. Each skill builds on the last. Stoicism works the same way. Maybe this week you master pausing before reacting. Just that one principle. Next month you add negative visualization. Over time, these tools become reflexes, shaping not just how you handle crises, but how you experience life itself. The goal isn't to eliminate turbulence. It's to develop the balance of a sailor who knows how to adjust the sails rather than curse the wind. Epictetus, who endured slavery and exile, left us a compass for this journey. The first and greatest victory is to conquer yourself. Notice he didn't say, control every circumstance or never feel anger. Self-conquest means recognizing that your power lies not in what happens, but in how you meet it. When a flight gets cancelled, you can rant at the gate agent, or you can pull out your book and reclaim the time. Both face the same event, only one walks away with dignity intact. So here's your invitation. Scroll back through these principles and pick just one to live with this week. Maybe it's journaling each night like Marcus Aurelius, or seeking discomfort like Musonius Rufus. Then share your choice in the comments. What will you practice, and what challenges do you anticipate? This isn't just an exercise, it's the start of a conversation, because the beauty of Stoicism is that it's never finished. There's always another layer to uncover, another storm to navigate better than the last. The tools are here, the path is yours to walk, and remember, every master was once a beginner who chose to begin.